Welcome to Sports Econ 101, the show where we discuss sports topics from a business perspective. I'm your host, Edward Brown, along with my co-host, Vern Glenn of CBS APIX TV in San Francisco, and Bruce McGowan.
It's good to be aboard.
Yeah. And today's show is going to be really special because we have a special guest,
Who?
Art Spander.
Well, wait a minute. Wait. Art Spander.
Art Spander.
Well, how about that, Brooke? Man,
50 years in the Bay Area, by the way.
we're getting the heavy hitters on this
50
show.
years in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
Nobody's worked longer in the Bay Area in sports media.
Yeah,
Wow.
if you
I
got,
think Glenn Dickey has.
Oh, I
Well, we already have our on the phone.
Yeah.
Well, let me just finish off this here. So at every commercial break, we're going to be asking a sports trivia question. We're going to be giving away vacations to the first 3 emails with the correct answer. And the vacations are not sponsored by the radio station, but by Lighthouse Resort and Marina. And let's see, on Sports Econ 101, you can listen on iHeartRadio and TuneIn Radio, Sports Byline USA, and CRN. And by the way, San Jose Sharks hockey is coming to town. Don't miss your chance to experience NHL hockey when the Sharks battle the Canucks in preseason action on September 23rd, live at Stockton Arena. Get your tickets now at the Stockton Arena box office or all Ticketmaster outlets. Stockton is Sharks territory.
yeah, it's a media day for the Sharks coming up.
That's right.
Yep.
And today's trivia theme is football.
Ah.
We're in football season, so we're going to
America's national sport.
That's right. We're going to talk a little bit about that because off the air you were talking about the penalties in the NFL and how it's kind of ruining things. And this segment of Sports Econ 101 is sponsored by Pacific Private Money, providing mortgage investments that are currently yielding 8% secured by real estate. It doesn't get any more secure than that or conservative than that. Check them out at pacificprivatemoney.com. If you have a question, you can email Edward at sportsecon101.com and we'll answer it on the air. And don't touch that dial because when we come back,
Don't touch it.
Don't
Don't touch it.
We're not going anywhere.
we're not going anywhere. Yes, when we continue after commercial message.
That's what Bob Agnew would always say.
That's right.
We're going to continue.
That's right. We will have Art Spander, the famed sports writer, on our show. You're listening to Sports Econ 101. All right, so that's our 2-minute and 20-second right on the bun
Right
money.
on the button. So you're going after the A's tonight. Who's pitching? Scott Kazmir?
I think so. I'm not sure. I'm jumping from sport to sport. I'm trying to, catch up with everything.
Yeah.
I went to the Giants last week.
It's interesting how the Giants seem to, now the last couple of days, they've hit the wall. They're not scoring runs. Pagan is hurt. They still don't have Mike Morris back. And the A's are finally winning again. So maybe the tides will change again.
The A's had a terrible month there.
Oh,
terrible.
my God, yeah.
The Giants had a bad midsummer, and then they won 9 or 10 in a row at home. So they're overdue. And then, to me, the big game was Saturday, the one they got annihilated in, because had they won that, then they're tied. Even if they lose to Kershaw, which you figure they'll do, they're only a game out.
Yeah.
They're 3 out, and then they lose last night. They're not gonna catch them.
They're going to play for the wild card.
Have to get to the wild card, and when you play one game,
That'll be fun, though. I look forward to that. A winner-take-all game. That'll be fun.
but it's dangerous. You can
Oh,
lose one game like that to anybody.
Well, they'll have Bumgarner going, so they should be in good shape.
That should be a 3-game series.
that
With a wild card.
Yeah, it should be, but
Okay, so we're gonna come right in and Bruce.
Let's jump in.
Yeah.
Bruce,
Sure,
Art?
sure,
Okay.
sure.
All right, here we go. Sports Econ 101 continues with me, Edward Brown, your host, along with Vern Glenn. Bruce McGowan.
And it's great to have Art Spander with us. And I got to tell you a little story about Art. When I first got into broadcasting in 1975, he was already a 10-year vet, and Art has been doing this now in the Bay Area for 50 years, and there's showing no signs of slowing down. What's going on, Art? You just want to keep doing this until into the next millennium, huh?
Well, until you can't. In fact, it's funny. I was talking to Al Michaels, who I've known ever since he was at Hamilton High School in L.A. We were both talking. You either do it or you don't do it. And if you enjoy doing it, then you keep going if you can. I mean, there will become a time where physically or mentally or whatever, you can't do it anymore. And if you enjoy, in fact, Ira Miller, who you remember, who moved to Chicago and is basically out of the business, said, and he's been writing for, this Pro Sports Exchange doing the Bears home games. He says, I'm going to start going to the Super Bowl again because I may not be able to go. And I think in time, and of course, that's what both you and and Bert, we grew up doing this for years and years. We know the people in the business. We know the people in the press box, although fewer and fewer as we get older and they get younger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, here's what I told. My wife works. I have grandkids. My kids work. Am I going to go to Starbucks and sit there for 3 hours saying, "Oh, the 1960s"? you got to. And I also believe that if you sort of just retire mentally, you roll up and die.
Yeah, you lose your edge. You're right, Art. You couldn't be more correct. Yeah.
And I see these. You know, Gene Sarazen was going until he was in his 90s. He was sharp as ever. The great golfer. And Marv Levy, who coached the Bills, who coached Cal way back in the 60s, I still hear him talking about football.
Yeah.
And it's great. Also, it gives you a link to the past. One of the things I read many years ago is that the great thing about baseball is it enables the generations to talk to each other. And I have a 7-year-old grandson, and he's a huge baseball fan, and you couldn't talk anything else, you know, really, to a 7-year-old, and yet you can talk sports.
Isn't it a shame though that for these kids today, if something happened before 2000, it's like
it never happened.
It's like it never happened. Like it doesn't register.
Oh, and that's our job to instruct them.
That's true. I hate it. Don't you hate it, Art, when you hear somebody say, "Back in the day"? Well, what is that? Before you were born or before 19? I never figured out what back in the day.
But you know what's interesting is that baseball hasn't changed that much. I mean,
you're right.
Go back to the 1870s, and sure, it's changed. But you go to 1890,
and the game itself is not. No,
really
you're right.
Changed that much
compared to football or basketball or
exactly.
Some of these other
That's
sports.
what's really kind of neat. You look at a guy like Babe Ruth and go, he could play today.
Yeah, no question.
Be fast.
Has golf changed that much? Right? You cover golf really closely.
The golf, they changed the clubs. When Bobby Jones came along, they were using different shafts. They're using hickory shafts. The balls didn't go as far, but the game is the same. I mean, I hear people say, and this, a couple of younger golfers, Tiger Woods would have killed Bobby Jones. Not if he played in the same era with the same equipment. So,
right.
Just like I thought the greatest basketball player I had seen when I was covering in the early 60s was Elgin Baylor of the Lakers, and he played for Seattle U, and he played against Cal and the 58 NCAAs and everything. And yes, Michael Jordan plays the game differently. The game then got elevated. Everybody started leaping and jumping, but Elgin Baylor could do what nobody else could do back in the 60s and early 70s. So you play the game that everybody else in your era plays, and are you the best? Yeah. And comparing eras is impossible. The what do you call it? The games, these what do you call it? Like EA Sports, they like to have Rocky Marciano against Muhammad Ali.
That's always fun, huh?
It's impossible.
It is impossible.
But a guy like Will
how do you compare them?
Yeah.
But Will Chamberlain, though, I mean, he was a man among boys when he was.
He was. You don't know how good an athlete Will Chamberlain was.
He was at one point one of the strongest.
He was a 400-meter dash at Kansas.
Wow.
He was a high jumper, and you know how he could play basketball. And I remember that one time he was threatened to take on Muhammad Ali in the boxing ring.
That was
He would have killed Ali because with that reach, nobody could get to him, and he was strong. I once saw him in a stop a fight. The Warriors were playing at Oakland. He just reached over and picked up two guys. I think one may have been Al Attles. One with each hand.
I got a great story about him. I only met the guy one time, and I was a little kid. I was at the airport, and I literally bumped into this guy who, my head was about at his waist because I was about 12 years old. And I feel this huge hand encompass my head. It completely covered my head. I look up, there's this guy, this big, towering guy with a goatee looking down at me with a big smile. Of course, I recognized him immediately. He goes, "How you doing, little fella?"
Well,
so there you go.
How tall are you now?
6'6".
Okay, you come up to his belly button.
Yeah, there you
go. Wow.
Hey, Art, what's your favorite story you covered?
My favorite sport or story or
story? What's your favorite story?
It's really hard. I was there when the U.S. in Lake Placid, when the U.S. beat the Soviet Union in 1980, and emotionally, that was incredible because of course, Russia was invading Afghanistan, and the country was all with arms. And here you have the bunch of college kids against these Soviet masters of sport, and somehow the U.S. wins. But I also, a guy who I'm a year older than Jack Nicklaus, and I've been covering him. I met him at the Olympic Club in 1966 when the Open was there, when I also met Johnny Miller, who was 19 years old then. And so I have a lot in common, you might say, with Nicklaus. When Nicklaus won the Masters in 1986 at age 46, and once again I was there, that was incredibly emotional because it's like the old guys can still do it.
Hey, Art, not to get off on a tangent, whatever happened to Johnny Miller? He had some kind of injury problems or something? I remember he was really, for a while, he was one of the best in the game, and then he just what happened?
He has leg problems. His leg, I don't know how to describe him. I should know.
Was it like a circulation or something?
A circulation problem.
Yeah.
And he also, he said he couldn't. He lost his putting touch.
Really?
Which is not unusual in golf.
Yeah.
And in fact, I read something. Somebody asked Arnold Palmer what the yips were. Ben Hogan had him terribly.
Really?
Where you're standing over your putt, you can't draw the putter back. And Palmer said it's as much physical as it is mental, because after gripping a club maybe 10,000, 15,000 times over 20, 30, 40 years, your wrist tightened up. So it is, in other words, that's the one sport you can play at a top-notch level until you're into your 60s. You can't play it the way you did in your 40s, but you can still play it. But you don't have that touch, and you don't have the feeling.
Well, it's the same thing. It reminds me of baseball. They keep telling the hitters, keep your hands loose. You should almost be throwing the bat. That's how you get.
I saw Hunter Pence literally did throw the bat. Did you see that the other day, Art? Hunter Pence of the Giants was protecting the plate, I guess, and he literally threw the bat at the ball. And when the ball hit the bat, he did not have that bat in his hands. The ball, coincidentally, bounced off the mound, hit the second base bag, and went straight up in the air. With something, it would look like some kind of cartoon play.
Well, he's the only guy who hit the ball 3 times with one swing.
That's right, during the World Series.
Stay with us, Art. We're going to cut to our first commercial break here, and the theme is football. Okay, so now, Art, I'm going to ask this question. Don't answer it until after we come back from break.
Because whatever it is, Art will know the answer.
That's why I said it. Okay, here we go. Who was the first player ever voted Super Bowl MVP while playing on a losing team? All right. Also, I'll give you a little hint. I don't know if this really helps. He was also the first defensive player named MVP. All right. So that's our question. The first 3 emails with the correct answer are going to win a free 3-day, 2-night stay at the Lighthouse Resort. Email edward@sportsecon101.com the answer to this question. Who was the first player ever voted Super Bowl MVP while playing on a losing team? Okay, now, Art, don't be looking on the internet now. By the way, Bobby Jones, he played with a square ball, didn't he? They didn't invent round balls then. Yeah. Okay. All right. Don't touch that dial. Sports Econ 101 will continue.
God, Art, I don't have the foggiest idea.
God, is it Bob Lilly of the Cowboys?
No, he was a defensive player.
A defensive player on a losing team.
Yeah. And
who would that be?
I think, was it on the Cowboys?
Was it the Cowboys? Was it Super Bowl 5 in that Cowboy game?
The Blunder Bowl, where there were like 9 turnovers.
Jim O'Brien kicked the win.
For Baltimore.
For the Baltimore Colts.
That was that's
Art, how many Super Bowls have you covered, by the way?
All of them, had he?
38 Super Bowls.
Wow.
61 straight Rose Bowls.
Wow.
They started selling programs down there.
61
make sure we're going to repeat that on the air. That'll
38 Super Bowls.
Yeah, I do 47 straight Masters.
Oh my God! Yeah, I thought I'd been to a lot of Super Bowls. I've been to 10, and the last one.
Well, we got one guy in San Francisco, Larry Ellison, been to every one of them. He's in that.
Is that right?
He's in that never missed a Super Bowl club.
There's only a handful of people.
So there's like three guys.
But in the 60, where did he get all his money back then?
Art, when did you go to your first Super Bowl?
The Raiders against the Vikings.
Oh, okay.
1977.
Yeah, that was my first Super Bowl too.
I believe.
Yeah.
76.
Yeah, it was a lot more Bay Area media in those days. You go to the press box.
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot more media, period.
Yeah, there was.
But, when the 49ers were good, they used to travel, there were like 29 people, writers, TV, et cetera, et cetera. And as Vern knows, you needed a know, one guy, you do your own thing.
That's right.
Yeah, you're talking to him.
I know people want to hear it.
That's how Vernon.
Man.
That's how Vernon stayed employed. He's been a man of many talents.
Yeah.
All right, guys, here we go. We're going to
Kind of be like asking you to be a photographer in addition to being a writer.
Well, some guys have to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Sports Econ 101 continues. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Vern Glenn and Bruce McGowan. When we cut to the first commercial break, we asked this trivia question. Who was the first, we're talking football, who was the first player voted the Super Bowl MVP while playing on a losing team?
God,
And he was a defensive player.
He was a defensive player. And you guys have the right team.
Right, it was
right?
Dallas Cowboys.
Dallas Cowboys, and who did they play against?
Well, they lost to Baltimore.
They lost to Baltimore.
Right.
Okay, so that is the correct
So,
Super Bowl.
so we were right. So it's Super Bowl 5.
Bob Lilly?
No, that would be...
Leroy Jordan?
No, this is somebody you don't really think of.
A
Art,
defensive back?
do you know the answer?
No, I did. I've seen it, and I might. Leroy Jordan sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay, you ready?
Randy White was a couple of years later.
Yeah,
They
it
won.
was later, yeah. Because this is
the Manster.
Okay,
Yeah.
here's the answer.
Half man, half monster.
Chuck Howley?
Chuck Howley.
I was gonna
Chuck
say.
Howley.
Chuck Howley, yeah.
Chuck Howley.
I remember that was the Super Bowl was on my birthday. So I remember that one.
Nine turnovers in that game. 9.
Yeah.
6 by the Cowboys, 3 by the Colts.
Well, it's almost like when the Jets beat the Colts. There were a lot of turnovers against the Colts. That's why the Jets beat them.
Yeah.
So we have on the phone here Art Spander, who is a famous sports writer, and Bruce.
He's so much more than a sports writer.
Yeah.
I mean, just kind of his knowledge. I mean, Art's probably forgotten more than a lot of people will even know.
Well, I love sitting. I don't get a chance to sit next to Art very often in the press box. Once in a while I do. And it's just so much fun because not only does Art know the answer to the questions or he can tell you stories, but he was there when it happened. I'm curious, Art.
Yeah, he can tell you the backstory.
Yeah.
Which is,
Well, I know you were talking out of school here, so to speak, but Al Davis has been gone for 3 years. You were pretty close to Al Davis. I got to know him pretty well, and he was friendly with me, but you really got to know him well. What was Al Davis like? What was it like getting to know this man?
Well, I don't know if anybody really, quote, knew him. I got along with him, and I covered the Raiders in 1977 for the Chronicle. And in those days, the life and sports and newspapers and radio and TV were a lot different. Al didn't have a PR man. And, of course, today, the public relations or in college sports information directors basically act as gatekeepers to keep you from talking to people.
Yeah, remember Al Locasal promoting the silent? Who are you? Who are you right for? Get out of here.
Yeah. And little Al is still around. Yeah, he's down in Southern California.
Al, if you were over at their old place in Alameda, there's just a little shack of a locker room. You wanted to talk to a player, you just walked in and talked to him. And Al's thing was, if these guys aren't man enough to talk to you, then that's their problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember Ken Stabler gave me a story. He wasn't playing, and he says, and the Raiders weren't scoring. He says, I can get us TDs, and the Chronicle bannered, Stabler, I can get us TDs. And Al was not mad at all. It's like, okay, go get TDs, go get touchdowns. And he was interesting. I mean, Al wanted you to think he knew everything in the world. You probably went into this, Bruce, where you'd sit down and ask him a Raider question. He'd want to talk about the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
Or nuclear. Or
big time historian.
Yeah.
This is me. I know everything.
Yeah, the last couple of years, I had a conversation with him in about 2008, and he started going off on a tangent about Vladimir Putin. And this is before Putin became, I guess it was just before he became not the Soviet, but the president of Russia. And he was fascinated with Vladimir Putin and he wanted my opinion too, which was kind of interesting.
He believes, was it Machiavelli?
Yeah.
It's better for the people to fear you than love you.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, everybody. Al said he loved nothing better than to go to a visiting site, say Baltimore or Kansas City, and he knew the people that the other team was worried. The Raiders used to be very good, as you remember. Sure. And he said, I could just hear the fear in the stands.
I love it.
Hey.
And so the last few years they haven't been very good, so there's no fear. But yeah, they were good, and it was fun, and they had a bunch of brigands and wild people.
Hey, Al. Hey, Art. Do you remember the Al Davis press conference up in Napa? It was one of his Al Davis State of the States, and your cell phone kept going off.
Yeah.
And it'd go off, and then Art, he'd turn it down, whatever, check it. Then Al would just go on the spiel again, and it would go off again. And then when it went off the third time, Al said, "Art, you tell your broker this is an Al Davis press conference. I'll have to call him back." That was the funny. That was the remember that one, Art?
That's too. Hey, I could ask, what do you think Al Davis would?
I remember that, and I also know if your cell phone went off, if you're at practice and your cell phone went off, Al went crazy.
Yeah,
he did not like that.
He didn't want to join in the real world. He wanted total control over everything.
What do you think his reaction would be to what the Raiders have become under his son, with Reggie McKenzie and Dennis Allen and the people they have drafted? Do you think he'd be kind of aghast?
But look, they were headed there. They were already bad when Al died in 2011. In other words, he messed everything up by trying to play football the way they did in the 70s, one, and two, making bad signings and ruining their whole salary structure. So I don't know whether Reggie McKenzie can do much or can't do anything, but until this year, they were really strapped because of the salary cap. Now, you went out and signed a bunch of older people, free agents, and it doesn't seem to be working at all. So, I don't know where they're going. It's hard to believe that Dennis Allen, their head coach, will last out this year. They got, as I tell people, they're playing at New England this coming Sunday. They're playing at Old England in London the following Sunday. So against Miami, they could very well be 0-4, and then they have a bye.
Yeah, well, bye week that's a popular time to make a change.
You got it. I'm not saying they should or they will, but if things don't get better, they've had two awful seasons under Dennis Allen. I don't know whether it's hard to blame head coaches. Sometimes they can just screw things up where they go ahead and try to do something where they shouldn't. And I always point out, if you have a lot of 110-pound guys, don't go for home runs. If you have a lot of 280-pound guys, don't lay down bunts. Well, it's the same thing. Your system has to fit your talent. But I don't know whether they don't have any talent, they have a bad system. But one thing, this is a universal, you have to have a defense in football. If you don't have a defense, the other team takes the ball and it runs it for 10, 8 minutes, 7 minutes, 10 minutes, and the next thing is the game is over and your offense never got the ball. So you have to stop the other team. And here's something I quote a lot. A long time ago, 1963, when I was at the Santa Monica Outlook and a couple of years out of college, out of UCLA. I was covering SC and UCLA, and McKay, knowing I went to UCLA, but also having some fun with me, says, "Let's go have a drink. I want to find out what you know about football." And he sits me down, and he's having a scotch, and I'm having a beer, and he says, "Well, blah, 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 blah." And I said, "Well, you do this and you do that." He says, "No, you win on defense." And I always remember this. And it's the same thing in baseball, hockey, football, soccer, basketball. He says, you win on defense because if the other team doesn't score, the worst you'll ever get is a 0-0 tie.
Yeah. I agree with you, but I think in basketball you can beat a good defense with a good offense. But that's a rarity.
Over the years, I've seen things where Bear Bryant said, "You know why defense is easier to teach? If a guy steals your wallet, you chase him and catch him. That's defense."
There you go.
And so it's much easier to knock down a pass or to knock a basket down than to complete a pass. Yeah. Although they certainly did the other night, had some wonderful receptions, or to hit a basket from 25 feet. And that's why in the playoffs, defense shuts down the outside game in the NBA.
There you go.
And who wins in hockey? The goalie.
Yeah, the goalie can turn the whole series.
Also, in
Anyway,
football,
I always remember that. And how did the Giants win the World Series 2 years ago? They just shut down Cardinals and the Tigers in the last 5 games. Almost no, I can't remember, was it 7 runs or 9 runs? Great pitching. And pitching and defense go together.
Yeah.
Also in football, you have a situation where if the offense just keeps going and going, the defense just gets tired because the offense knows where they're going.
You have a good defense. The offense doesn't. In other words, the other team's offense doesn't have the ball very long, and your offense gets it. But even a couple of years ago, look at the people say that time of possession doesn't matter. It certainly matters in a 30-minute. In a 60-minute game or a 30-minute half, if the other team has the ball 6 or 7 minutes more than you do, because they're having more opportunities to score.
Unless you turn the ball over 4 times with 3 picks and a fumble.
Then you lost your opportunity.
Well, that sounds familiar.
That's another cliche, but so true.
Yeah.
If you have a lot of turnovers, you're going to lose.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to get to our our second commercial break here. And the theme is football. Who created the 4-3 defense?
Okay, all right. Who created the 43 defense?
Who created the 4-3 defense?
What coach, in other words?
That's
What
right.
coach created the 43 defense?
What coach?
Okay.
The first 3 emails with the correct answer going to win that free 3-day 2-night stay at the Lighthouse Resort. Email edward@sportsecon101.com the answer to this question. We are talking to coach on this one. Who created the 4-3 defense? All right? And stay with us, Sports Econ 101. We're going to have Art Spander give us a few more words. And by the way, I got to make a quick correction here because last week I mentioned about the Ray Rice thing. I did not see the fact that he spit on her, and that pissed me off because I thought
she spit on him.
She spit on him first.
She spit on him
really?
first.
Well,
Yeah.
It looked like he spit on her, but we'll talk more about that when we return.
Okay. Who spat on who first?
See, I didn't see her doing it to him. I saw him do it to
Did
her.
you see her spit on him, Art, in the video?
Who's that? Oh.
Did you see Ray Rice's wife spit on him?
Yeah, I mean, you saw the original video.
Right.
And all you saw in this couple of months ago,
Right.
dragging her out, and he didn't know exactly what happened. It didn't look very appealing, but he didn't see any punches. But this one, of course,
Yeah.
No, but it was the third one.
very
where they
dramatic.
showed.
And here's another thing: these athletes, of course, they don't think at all. But in today's world, everything is photographed.
Oh boy.
And there's copies, there's YouTube, there's
Why is
secret
it
cameras,
so late
there's
now?
protective
Over a year ago or
security
something?
cameras, and the people talk, and in a way, he got his just desserts. He got exactly what he should have.
Yeah.
Don't go around punching women.
No, you don't.
Just jumping. Reggie Jackson, who I've known forever with the A's, he said, as an athlete, you can get away with a lot of things, except 2: doing drugs and hitting women.
Or hitting kids.
Well,
Adrian
okay.
Petersen, yeah. Okay, let's get into this. Get into our third spot here. Sports Econ 101 is continuing here. Edward Brown, your host, along with Vern Glenn and Bruce McGowan.
Yes, sir.
Our second commercial break trivia question: football. Who created the 4-3 defense? Which coach?
I'm going to defer to Art on this one.
Art?
I don't know.
How about you, Vern? What do you think?
I'll take a guess. Chuck Knoll. How about that?
Going back
Good
further?
guess, but
Further?
I gotta go back. I gotta go back
Just a little
further.
tiny bit further.
Really?
Just
I gotta go
a
back
little
further.
bit.
Chuck
Yeah,
Norris.
not
I know.
much.
It's before modern times, wasn't it? I mean,
Not too much. Not too much.
So back in the
Howard
60s?
or somebody like that?
No. It's way after
40s,
Hollis.
50s?
No. I'd say
Vince
it was-
Lombardi?
No,
43.
even after, tiny bit after him.
Hall of Fame coach.
Yeah.
Somebody we immediately
You
recognize.
immediately recognize.
43 did. Vince Lombardi?
No, we said
A
Vince
little bit
Lombardi.
after him.
A little after.
I mean, I'd say about the same time.
About the
frame,
same
actually.
time?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
43 deep.
AFL coach or
No,
NFL?
NFL.
NFL coach.
Good.
NFC.
Tom Landry?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Tom Landry.
Tom, that was that's his strength.
Wasn't the
defense.
flex defense also something he invented? I think it was.
Wasn't he defensive? Was he D-backs coach for the New York Giants?
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
That's right. Before that. Okay, so now right when we're cutting to break, I mentioned something, just a quick quip, because last week we had recorded the show prior to the latest video showing what I saw to be Ray Rice spitting on his girlfriend.
See, I never saw him spit. I saw her spit at him.
And I saw her. Well, okay, what I saw was
Maybe
him
he's
spitting at her, and then that's why she lunged down, and that's also
Yeah.
like the pre-elevator situation.
Okay.
But and so I wasn't obviously I wasn't defending him, but I was kind of wondering, well, what words was he saying that made her lunge at him?
No, they were
well,
probably,
now it's the fact that she's spitting on.
They're probably having just a nasty knockdown, drag out fight.
Yeah.
Well, I was talking to an attorney who said, maybe what they should have done is have a felony by the DA, right? Because he whacked her, right? And if he gets convicted, and then the NFL could use that and say that's why he's not being allowed to return. The only problem is that wasn't Michael Vick convicted of a felony too?
Yeah, but what Art was saying earlier,
He financed the dog fighting.
Financed it, yeah. And as much as that's a heinous thing, doing something to a dog is less damaging to one's reputation, I guess, than hitting a woman or hitting a child or doing drugs.
Human on human crime.
Yeah, in today's world, like I said, for better or for worse.
So getting on to that, Adrian Petersen.
Yeah.
So now, to me, there's a difference between spanking and hitting with
Well, let's get Art's taking this, because Art, you grew up at a time where corporal punishment of children, and still today, people take.
They used to even spank you at school.
Yeah, I remember I had a teacher who
spanking was spanking, but now, of course, it's child abuse. Of course, there's a difference in spanking with a hand and hitting somebody with a switch or a block of wood or something like that.
I got that with my
times
principal.
have changed. We know that, and what we accept and what we don't accept is greatly different. I mean, just a little thing. I can remember, if a kid gets, if you put a 5-year-old into a car and he doesn't have a car seat, you're guilty of a violation of the law. I remember when I was in the Cub Scouts, we would ride in these huge open trucks.
Sure.
Yeah.
And we go 50, 60, 80 miles, to a camp that way.
Yeah.
And of course, I mean, everything has changed. But I think we're more aware of protecting people now.
Yeah.
And of course, as I mentioned, and you guys also, with all of these video devices, people can actually show what you did. It's one thing if it's a he said, she said, but if somebody actually shows you pushing or shoving or hitting or an auto accident, then they have a pretty good case.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff can be shot and then turned around and on YouTube within minutes.
Yeah. Interesting relating to all this, though, the NFL is trying to protect its players more and more. And it just seems, I talk to a lot of the old-time defensive players, as I'm sure you have, Vernon, and you have, Art, and they tell me, guys like George Atkinson, for instance, told me, he said, I couldn't play today because I wouldn't be allowed to play the football the way I was taught how to play, which was to hit another guy. And
think of all the penalties Ronnie Lott would incur, the way he hit.
What do you
Jack Tatum.
Yeah, do you think the NFL has legislated defense out of the game to a certain degree, and is that a good thing, or is it, a bad thing?
Well, the players are so much stronger and faster, and of course, as you well know, we have become very aware of concussions and lawsuits, and the New York Times had a piece two or 3 days ago, front page, something like 1 out of every 3 NFL players will end up with brain damage.
Wow.
And they just smash each other. I guess in the old days they did get hurt, but the helmets were softer and the speed of collisions was not as much.
Matter of simple physics, a bigger object moving at a faster speed.
Right.
Yeah.
because the bones haven't gotten
used to have a 150-pound linebacker. Now it's 260 pounds, and he runs just as fast.
Mm-hmm.
If not faster.
Reading something though, Ronnie Lott. Somebody asked Ronnie Lott what it's like to play for the 49ers. This is 25 years ago or so, and he says it's like putting an overcoat, not a heavy coat, one of those rain jacket coats on, and running against your garage door at full speed.
Oh.
And he says that's the kind of collision you have.
I never figured out why football, I'm sure we all love to play touch football, even tackle football when we were kids, but I can't imagine the hitting and the pounding and the vicious contact, how anybody can enjoy that. I just don't
They
understand.
wear knee pads.
But I mean, think about it. You know, you're
Well,
running into it, you know, constantly
it-
running into somebody, you know, banging them with your
in
elbows.
its cruelest form. I mean, these are paid gladiators.
They are.
And
Yeah.
we are the Romans in the Colosseum watching.
They're gladiators.
Yeah.
But that's, look at boxing,
Yeah.
wrestling.
Yeah.
My grandfather, my great grandfather, who barely understood English. This is like 1949, 1950. Would watch wrestling matches on TV and grunt and groan. He loved it. And you know, collisions and attacks, and you know, you've heard the argument that football is a modern equivalent of war, and they've been saying that for years, and I don't know. But going back, I've been watching this Roosevelt series a little bit on
Great series, by the way.
KQED.
Yeah, great series.
Roosevelt tried to ban football
That's right.
because it was too rough.
Yeah.
And now, 100 years later, it's much rougher. And of course, now everybody's aware of concussions. And so I don't know where it's going to go. But kids still want to play it. And of course, human nature being what it is, everybody thinks I won't get hurt, the other guy will.
Yeah, it's interesting. George Patton, the great American general, once said, "Americans love to fight. They love the sting of battle, and they love football." And there's a certain amount of truth to football, as you mentioned, Art, being like organized war. I mean, it's you look at the number of injuries and just the contact, and I think it's the spectacular, just the whole spectacle of people smashing into each other.
And does it seem like there's more injuries, like just in the last couple of weeks?
Well, just in the last couple of weeks, there have been, yeah.
And partly that could be just because the first
Something
part of
else
the
that
season.
makes football go, I mean, two issues. One is gambling.
Mm-hmm.
They can't. It's you know, week to week, a lot of gambling, and in Great Britain they have gambling the pools on their soccer, which they call football. One thing, and the other is television. It's a great television sport.
Oh, yeah.
And baseball is hurt by television because it's hard to capture the entire diamond, the area, the outfield on a screen. But football, television made football because you couldn't see the collisions, and now you see them up close, and of course replay, and that's all. And people say, "Wow, look at that!" Just like the catch that made Sunday night.
Brandon Marshall?
Catch by the Bears receiver. Yeah. And wow, I've seen it like 20 times, and I was there, and I still don't know how I did it. Yeah. So that's the type of action that really draws people to football. And you know, unless somebody says we're going to ban the game, I keep reading, "Oh, there won't be football in 5 years." Yes, there will.
Yeah. Hey, Art, what was the favorite game that you covered? The most exciting NFL game you've ever covered?
Boy, hard to say.
The catch game with Dwight Clark?
When the 49ers beat the Cowboys.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And I was, been covering the 49ers, and I'd heard, just like the Giants here, they'll never win a big one. Remember, Bill Walsh, an hour after the game, Bill Walsh, who never read the papers, comes over to me and says, "You can stop writing that we can't win the big one."
Yeah, that was interesting in that game, too, because the Niners turned.
It goes into sports. It isn't just a physical game on the field or on the ice, or it's what went on beyond that. The guy who, if Phil Mickelson, who's not going to, if he ever wins the U.S. Open, he's won every other major. So all he has to do is win this one to beat one of only 7 or 8 golfers, if it's that many, to win all 4 majors. So as you're talking about the backstory, that's what makes the particular game. The 49ers, who had never won anything, they lost in 1957. I wasn't up here, but I remember the story. They led the Detroit Lions in the NFC playoff, big score at Kezar, and Hugh McElhaney ran the opening kick, and he didn't score. That's an opening kick in the second half, and didn't score. They kicked the field goal, and they led, I don't know, by big margin.
27-7, yeah.
Tobin Road,
the
quarterback.
Tobin Road, yeah, he filled in that day.
The legend in San Francisco was, this city never wins anything.
Well, wasn't it 1971 that the onside kick of Dallas.
72
Oh, yeah,
actually.
72?
72.
72.
Same day.
1, 2,
Yeah,
2.
same day as the Franco Harris Immaculate Reception.
It was the same day. That's
Yeah.
right. Black Saturday they called it.
Yeah.
The Immaculate Reception, and then that was back at Pittsburgh, and then we're in the press box watching, and Preston Riley fumbles. But see, all this had to work together. Bang, 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 bang.
And if you remember, Danny White almost brought them back after the catch.
You're talking about moving ahead to 1981 now.
Yeah. It's only the fumble that
Super Bowl, yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah. And of course, that's another thing that makes sports great. And I don't believe in the coulda, shoulda, woulda. But in any great game, there are so many close calls. One way, the game of inches, the line drive, the catch, the guy makes it, the pitch. The last night, the Giants, and the bases are loaded for Arizona, and it looks like it's strike 3, and they said, no, it wasn't a swing. Bang, next one, grand slam, Giants trail 4-0.
Yeah.
So that's all the history of sports. And of course, if the games mean something, then everything is magnified.
Well, Art Spander, it has been a pleasure to have you on the phone. Thank you for spending time with us on Sports Econ 101.
And before we let Art go, we should let our listeners know if they want to read Art's work. Art, you're on the internet as well, so tell us where we can read your stuff.
I'm writing for several internet sites, but everything I write ends up thanks to my whiz-bang son-in-law, Dave Peterkovsky. He puts it all on my site, www, or just artspander.com. So if I'm covering the Ryder Cup for Bleacher Report or Newsday in New York, or writing a piece for a British paper, or having some other work, everything ends up at artspander.com.
I'm looking forward to checking that site out.
All right, Art, thank you very much for joining us.
All right, we'll see you, Art.
Appreciate it.
Take care, man. He is a living legend. Most of our listeners may not have heard of Art Spander. He is a legend out here on the West Coast, and for, as I said, 50 years.
50 years.
Of covering sports.
Let's cover our. Speaking of that, let's cover our last trivia question here. All right, who was the Cowboys? Sometimes they're all Cowboys questions. Who was the Cowboys receiver? This is an easy one. Who was the Cowboys receiver who dropped the potential winning touchdown in Super Bowl 8?
Oh, I got that.
I got that one.
Yeah.
Okay, we had one easy one here. The first three
Super
emails-
Bowl 8?
Super Bowl 8.
I think it was Super Bowl 13, actually.
This is against the Steelers, Super
Right.
Bowl 8. We'll look it up again,
No.
but that's what I think it is.
No,
I think it was
Super Bowl 8
13.
was not Steelers.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, this was after. This was a little bit after
Well,
the.
Yeah.
someone
Because
gave me
I-
the right
because
information.
Because I was there.
All right, okay. So, all right. Well, then, how about just one of the Super Bowls? Who was this Cowboys?
Well, they
receiver
played.
who dropped
They
the
actually
potential-
played each other 3 times over the years.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. And Sports Econ 101 will continue when we get back.
When we get back, here we go.
Yeah, Jackie Smith. That's
Jackie
the one
Smith,
I remember.
yeah.
That's the one
You
that
sure
just.
it wasn't Super Bowl 8?
No, Super Bowl
Idiots that
8
give
would
me
have been.
Super Bowl 8.
God, Super Bowl 8. What was Super Bowl 8? Super Bowl 10
5 was Colts. 6 was Dolphins. 7 was.
7 was Washington and Miami. No. Let's see. Well, 10 was Steelers Cowboys first time. 11 was Raiders. Vikings.
So 10 was, and that was the dramatic Drew Pearson.
Lynn Swann? No.
Lynn Swann catch,
Lynn
right,
Swann,
at midfield.
Yeah, that was Super Bowl 10.
There was no.
That made
The
his
most
Hall of-
egregious drop was Jackie Smith.
Yeah. That was actually, the thing was, it wasn't the winning touchdown. They would have put him ahead.
Would have put him ahead.
Would have put him ahead. But it was a big. I mean, they didn't score. They didn't. I think they got a field goal. He just had it and just dropped it. That guy was a great player too. I think he's in the Hall of Fame.
No.
Jackie Smith.
Jackie Smith was a terrific tight end.
15 years. I think he was in the Hall of Fame.
Terrific tight end. He
Yeah,
did
but
play
they
for the
take it away from you. When
Mostly
you do
with
that
the
kind of
Cardinals, though. That's who he played most of his career with, the old St. Louis Cardinals.
thing. I'm looking at
I think
it now.
Jackie Smith is in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I think he should be. Well, if he isn't, he should be.
Yeah, but you take it away when you do a play like that.
Well, they remember it. That's unfortunately he's remembered more for that than anything else. And it shouldn't
Okay,
be that way.
I'm just looking up here. Super Bowl 8.
Super Bowl 8 was
You're right. Wait here. Oh,
it was probably Washington.
Minnesota versus Miami.
Yeah.
Idiots.
Yeah.
God,
Who gave that to you? Who was the source?
Stupid internet.
Well, they make mistakes.
I'll just say
Nobody's
into
perfect.
the Super Bowl.
Nobody's perfect.
I think they're
This
teasing
is
me.
how it goes. So.
I saw Mr. C in heaven yesterday.
We should get him on.
I saw Mr. C in it. He's terrific.
This guy who does a Howard Cosell impression.
This guy,
so funny.
This guy, he
He's
does appearances. He's local.
Yeah.
Does appearances, parties for the guy as Howard Cosell. He's got the yellow ABC Wild World Sports
Does he look like
jacket.
him at all?
Yeah.
Yeah, he
Puts the
glasses
shades on,
he
glass
has
the stogie.
cigar. Yeah.
It sounds
Howard
just
Cosell.
Get him on the
just
phone.
like
He
him.
would be great.
Mr. C in heaven. He
Yeah.
is awesome.
Look,
Does he do anything else? I mean,
I don't know.
He just
How he makes a living.
Howard
he's
Cosell.
Does he make a living doing that?
he's completely in character.
But does he
Oh,
make a
no.
living doing this, or is it just a little fun thing for him on the side?
I think it's a little fun thing that he just discovered that he just started doing on the side
Been doing it for a long
because he
time.
started doing the gig
Well, we got to get him in here so we can have on TV.
in
Oh,
the
yeah. The 90s?
early to mid '90s. After
Yeah.
Gary started doing KMVR full time.
Yeah, we used
Him
to imitate Howard Cosell all the time.
Him and Johnny the Gout Man.
He sent
Joe Willie
he sent me
Beaver Falls.
Sent you a picture?
see Mr. C in heaven.
Oh, there you
See,
go.
he sent me a text because I said because I sent him a text saying, "Hey, good seeing you today, Mr. C." And then he goes, "Same here, Vernon. Keep telling it like it is."
My favorite Howard Cosell story. So I'm covering, I'm covering the Raiders Broncos. It's a Monday night game, and the game ends, and all the writers crowd into that, try to get to the elevator, and all of a sudden, this two burly security guys go, stand back! Mr. Cosell has to get on the elevator." And Cosell's getting on the elevator, and he's got a canary yellow blazer, and he's smoking his stogie. He's got his wife Emmy with him, who's always with him. And everybody's like, "Hey, what's this? There's plenty of room for all of us." And Cosell turns around and he goes, "Gentlemen, do you have to catch the red eye?" "No, I got a deadline to meet." "Oh, I have to catch the red eye because I have to be on the air tomorrow morning. Your deadline can wait." And he goes like this.
And
"Fuck
waves.
you, Cosell!"
See, this also.
What?
Oh, you know what it was? It's Super Bowl 13.
That's right.
Yeah,
The thing
that's what
is,
I was
you
there.
know what it was?
What-
Whoever gave it to me, V111
There you
is
go.
8. This is X111.
Yeah, X11,
13.
there you
That's
go.
the reason.
That's okay. No big deal.
We'll make
Have
it.
some fun with it.
All right, here we go. Sports Week. Go to the last. Sports 10. Let's try this again. Sports Econ 101 continues. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Vern Glenn and Bruce McGowan. We kept the third final commercial break. We asked this trivia question, as Howard Cosell would say. Who was the Cowboys receiver who dropped the potential winning touchdown in Super Bowl 13, not Super Bowl 8?
Well, it was Jackie Smith. But
Jackie Smith,
Yeah, he didn't. It wasn't.
number 81.
It wasn't the winning. It could have been the winning touchdown.
Yeah,
Could have been.
That's what it says.
Back it was in the third quarter. Jackie Smith was a Hall of Fame tight end, a great tight end. I mean, we were just talking off mic. This guy probably is best remembered for dropping a pass and catching all the great passes and being a great
Well, you want
player.
to hear something funny about this? Okay, so Jackie Smith, who, by the way, played the whole season without catching a pass.
Is that right with Dallas? He was,
Yeah.
but well, he was late in his career.
Yeah.
late
And
in his
it
career.
turns out he didn't catch a pass in Super Bowl
Wow,
13.
that was a great. I covered that Super Bowl. That was in January '79 in Miami, and the Steelers won it 37-31, and there were like 12 just spectacular plays in that game. It was just back and forth, up and down the field. I love that game, and those two teams had a nice little rivalry. They played each other twice in the Super Bowl in 4 years.
All right, so here's our thoughts for the day as we close out. Before 1917, goalies in hockey were not allowed to fall to the ice to make saves, or else they were penalized.
Really?
So no falling.
Jeez, we have to kick the puck away. I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the longest drive in golf was 515 yards.
Wow.
Yeah, I could do that.
Phew.
Yeah, sure. And longest putt, a monstrous 375 feet.
Whoa! What kind of putting green is that?
Yeah, I can do that too.
Wow.
Jeez.
Just
Putting green.
teasing there.
Jeez.
Oh.
All right, tune in next week. for
Putting on a
sports.
glass of ice.
There you go.
All right, tune in next week for Sports Econ 101. Of course, I would have used a driver on that one.
We've got to get Howard Cosell on here to talk some sports with us. I'm going to work on that for our next guest, Mr.
Yeah,
Mr. Cosell
all
in
of us
heaven.
will talk like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tune in next week to Sports Econ 101. We're going to be discussing sports topics from a business perspective and giving away.
And
more
Howard
information.
Cosell in
Hopefully
heaven.
we'll get Howard Cosell on. All right, thanks for listening. On behalf of our team, I'm your host, Edward Brown. We'll see you next week.
Keep telling it like it is, America.
So long.